Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Special guest today is Eric Webster, who's here today to talk about the divinity within. And we're going to explore what that actually means. For 15 years, Eric has worked with hypnosis and in the Akashic Record, which I'm also going to be asking him about, which is the complete history of your soul, past, present, and future. Wow. So, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to see you.
Thank you. You too. We had a lot of fun on the pre-call, didn't we? So
We did.
So, do you want to kick off, Eric, by kind of letting us in on the origin story of your connection with divinity within? I mean, can you remember when you first tuned into the fact of the idea of divinity within?
Oh, my. That's got to be 25 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
I'm old. I am 71, so I've got some seniority in life. I think that it probably came out of a time where I was attending and participating at a Unity church. You have Unity there in Wales?
Oh, what is that?
Oh, it's a spiritual / metaphysical kind of church. Not your typical Christian dogma and, a lot of rules and stuff. There are a lot of authors that were available in the bookstore at the church. Louis Hay was there, and I mean some really wonderful big names of people that were doing the good work 30, 40, 50 years ago. But the whole idea of every living thing, human, four-legged, two-legged, feathered, crawling on their belly, covered in scales, it doesn't matter. Trees, plants, all have that divinity within them. We're all made in the image of the one that created us. Doesn't matter what color our exterior is. It doesn't matter what we believe, how we worship, who we love. None of those things separate us from that divine source. And for me, it served me, I think, pretty well when I could, even in challenging circumstances, to remember somewhere inside that person is that aspect of Christ. And so for me, it takes me a little out of step with traditional religion, because God is that old guy with a beard in heaven who's sitting there judging us. And I don't find that to be the case at all. It's an inside job, like so many things. And the people that are so cranked up about gay, lesbian, transgender people, what if that's the way God made them? I had a friend that his daughter-in-law came out, and he was so terribly upset about it. And I asked him, I said, so when did you get your punch card where you put the check mark that you were going to like women? Got just the blankest stare possible. And I don't think he could even understand the question. I said, well, you're demeaning your daughter-in-law because she chose to be gay. And that presupposes then that we have chosen to not be gay. And I'm just wondering when you got your car that you made that choice. And confounded him, but it's one of my favorite questions. If it's a choice, when did you make your choice? And so that's just one of my many eccentricities, but I think it serves me well, and it allows me to love and support every being. Every being. We have horses and dogs and cats and donkeys, and we've got the whole gambit at our home and farm, and the deer and the everybody that just wanders through. But it's just like, they're all here. They have wisdom, they have knowledge, they have compassion. I realized a few years ago that I used to think that the dogs came for love when they needed love. My dogs come to me for love when they know that I need it.
Yeah.
And they give me lessons every day. I'm writing a book. My dog Clyde and I are co-creating a book together about the wisdom of a four-legged sage. And it's great fun. I really need to get it, wrapped up and ready for publication. But
I agree.
Wisdom.
To get that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a fun thing. So how about you? What is your experience with that indwelling Christ, or that
The
divinity within?
Well, I wasn't brought up in a religious context at all. I was more brought up in a kind of more of a, what you might call a broad church of that spirit exists in all of us, but there was no identifying entities associated with the conversation, and that it's up to us to be true to that, to be true in the way we're following our lives, and to follow truth, follow love, all of those things. So it was a slightly different angle on the same idea, I suppose.
Okay.
And I think the thing I noticed for myself is that the degree to which I'm able to, I'm just saying this in response to your question, the degree to which I seem to be able to recognize the divinity within others is very much associated to the degree to which I'm able to know it in myself. When I'm more judgmental and less accommodating or compassionate to others, it's when I'm being more self-judgmental and less self-compassionate. So it's very much a mirror. When I'm in a great state, I can look out and recognize the incredible love and generosity and beauty in the entire universe.
That's a wonderful point, because I have read repeatedly, and I wholeheartedly believe that the things that bother us most about other people are the things that bother us most about ourselves.
Yeah.
And truly, everybody we meet, one way or another, is holding up a mirror to us. And what a wonderful opportunity to look in that mirror and go, I maybe wasn't at my ideal best there. Time to crank up the compassion or whatever was lacking.
100%. Yeah. And I also think one of the dangers for those of us who are in what you might call the helping professions is to emphasize the fact that the divinity within exists in everybody except me.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one who's flawed. I'm the one who, makes mistakes.
Not worthy. Yeah.
Not worthy. And that, to me, that's a supreme arrogance, actually, to deny our own divinity within is just as bad as denying it in other people.
But isn't that a hard struggle when you look at healers and readers, all the people that you're likely talking to on your podcast? They have a tendency to put everybody else on a pedestal here and themselves way down here, and that demand for perfection in themselves while they tolerate the most ridiculous nonsense from other people. That's a concept that I work with a lot with clients about. Man, just sitting there breathing, you are so worthy and deserving of all the best that the universe has. And nobody deserves to be on a higher pedestal. And so, we work to try and balance that out a little bit.
Yeah.
But it really is a common, but don't you think that there are an awful lot of us that is in our formative years, we're taught we're not worthy, we're not good enough. Men, and I know this firsthand because I are one, but we're taught that our value is in what we do. And if we're not being productive at any given moment, we have no value. And so we work totally out of balance in our lives of what really is important. And then we get to an age where we retire, and what do we do?
Yeah, where's
We
the
have-
yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree. Well, over here, it's even worse than that. Over here, is the merit isn't in what you're doing or what you're producing or delivering. It's in how much effort are you making.
Oh.
That's worse.
Yeah, because there's no amount of effort that's probably good enough, right?
Exactly. I mean, I'm talking about a negative aspect. I don't want to sort of, because I do feel like the quality of consciousness, generally speaking, is rising.
Yes.
These are kind of legacy issues, I think, that we're still working out as we're trying to evolve. I think. What do you think?
I totally agree with that assessment. Yeah. And oddly, from what I'm seeing in my practice, COVID ends up probably, despite all the things that were horrible about it, including the way it was handled, that's a whole other conversation. I think that COVID forced some people who have been running at full tilt for their entire lives, forced them to sit down and shut up and contemplate what they're doing in their life. And I think an awful lot of people got the message of, oh man, there's got to be more. Because I'm seeing a whole raft of new people exploring the spirituality and, opening themselves up to who they came here to be, and having conversations that I would bet they never had a single one to this shift. And I think that we really are on that the crux of some wonderful, remarkable, life-altering changes that are rolling out. And I think that everything that's going on that makes me grumpy and makes me twitch right now, I just know it's pushing us to the edge where all of a sudden, whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen, and we're going to rise up, going to rise above, we're going to ascend to another layer of consciousness. And oh man, I'm so ready for that.
Yeah, me too. Well, I hope I'm ready for it. I'm doing.
Yeah, I believe I am, and maybe that's just arrogance and ego. I don't know.
Yeah, we certainly have an appetite for it. Let's just say that.
Yeah,
We definitely have an appetite. No, I completely agree with you. And I think that's very interesting that you have people coming to you who are much more open now and exploring things they wouldn't. It's certainly happening over here as well. I'm having people showing up and saying, I'm not quite sure why I'm here. I just felt like I needed to be here.
Yep.
Please be gentle with me. Don't really know what to expect.
And what a wonderful, for me, it's like I feel so incredibly blessed that what I do gets to play some tiny little role in somebody finding their own path, finding out who they really came here to be, to have that shift and growth and opening of consciousness. Because man, if it's only about getting up and going to work and going home and eating and going to bed and doing it again, gosh, why bother?
I know. So do you think that so you got connected to this idea of divinity within in your kind of mid-40s, it sounds like, 25 years ago?
Yeah, probably.
Something like that. That's an interesting time to get connected to something like that, isn't it? It's a sort of you're already fully formed as an adult,
Yeah.
and you've got your way of living and way of being. When you started to get connected to that, what did it feel like? Was it a shock? Was it a relief? Was it a natural unfolding? How did it feel?
You ask really good questions. As I remember, and that's a long time ago, it it felt more like a homecoming, that recognition of, okay, here are the answers to the questions that I wasn't able to form. Even I didn't know enough what to ask. And here are some answers for me going forward. And then I got ordained as a Coptic minister. I took 3 years of training with the Coptic organization here in West Michigan, and I got Reiki attunements. I'm a Reiki master. That opened up a whole nother, good can of worms, but awarenesses. And then Akashic Record training came after that. And then hypnotherapy training came after that. So it's just been sort of a continuum of, and coming up next, I believe, is going to be animal communication. There's always a little bit of that going on in my home with the animals that we have, but I think it's going to be bigger than that. A dear friend of mine walked past me at a psychic fair a year or so ago, and she said, "Who is that great, big, beautiful black dog that's sitting behind you?" And Sherman, our Great Dane, who is in spirit, apparently had my back that day and was guarding and watching over me. So I'm really excited about that. We have an old Jack Russell, Stella, and she's probably 3 or 4 years past the anticipated life expectancy for a Jack Russell. So we know her day is coming. And I was sitting talking to her a couple of weeks ago. She was cold, so I tucked her into I wear a zippered hoodie when I'm around the house, and I just tucked Stella into my hoodie, and I was petting her and talking to her, and I said, "Oh, honey, we know this is getting hard for you, and I just want you to know that one day your sister Ellie, who's been in spirit now for a couple of years, one of these days Ellie's going to show up and she's going to say, 'Come on, Stella, let's go play.' And I want you to know that it's okay for you to leave your body here. We'll deal with that. And you can go with Ellie and you can play." And it's an image that, while it breaks my heart, it's an image that I love, because they are leaving those broken old bodies behind. A few years ago, we had 2 horses that we had to say goodbye to in the same day. And I won't go chapter and verse on the story, but it's a long, long story. And they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but it was time. And so we had the vet come out, and I always have that conversation with them and with everybody else in the barn. I say, "Okay, guys, we're going to say goodbye to Sarge and Nina this week. So make sure that when they go, they're taking with them all of your love. And if there's anything at all that you need to say to them, do it." And that one was a particularly hard one for me. They're never easy. And I guess I believe if they ever get easy, I need to look in the mirror and ask myself what the hell is wrong with me, because it's not supposed to be easy. I'm hanging on by a thread. And I get in my Jeep to drive from the barn up to the house to get cleaned up to come to my office, hit the ignition, Rolling Stones, Wild Horses. Put a fork in me, man, I'm done. But now when I hear that song, my first thought is, oh God, I hope there's nothing wrong in the barn, because that's the memory connection of it. But the other part of it is, then I see the faces of all of the beautiful beings that have blessed our lives by being in our company. They and they're gone, but I know they're running and they're playing and they're young and vibrant, and I know they're around. I would bet if I get to that full animal mediumship, I bet the barn is really crowded. So, and I look forward to exploring that connection a bit more. I do go on and on. I told you my last name is Webster, and I get my words wholesale, and so.
It's a beautiful, beautiful story. I'm tearing up over here as well. I've lost cats in my case, cats. And, it's always been gut wrenching. And I've always felt it's just so important to admit that, to let that feeling in, as you obviously do, and to allow that, because they are beings. I didn't know there was animal mediumship. I didn't know there was such thing.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, there's everything now, isn't there? So of course there is animal mediumship. Well, that sounds fascinating, really fascinating. I hope you'll come back on the show and tell me about that when you do stuff.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to.
That is fascinating. Oh, we do. There's I don't know if you've heard of a modality called Pellower. You haven't heard of it? It's not very big in the States yet. It's mostly in Australia and the UK. But one of the things we do with that is sending, Pellower energy to people towards end of life, but also for the first 3 days after they've passed, while they're old.
Okay.
And you can do the same with animals. And I did that with one of my cats after he passed. And it really, it certainly helped me a lot.
Sure.
I think it helped him, but I don't know. Right. But
I'm confident that it would have.
So I think these kind of ways of honoring the love and the connection and honoring these beings. And I think the divinity within, I think you came up with that theme when we spoke before, is just such a beautiful essence notion for us. And like a golden thread that we can follow.
Yeah. You take it even further. I have a tree that's out on the edge of the woods that overlooks the pasture. And I've claimed that as my tree. And I, not often enough, but when the weather's good, I'll go out there and sit with my back to the tree and do a meditative sort of thing where I become one with the tree, knowing that my roots go all the way down into the earth, and recognizing that there's as much tree below the ground as there is above, which is kind of a, understanding, as above, so below, which is a fairly common phrase, but becoming one with that tree and recognizing that my roots, that I'm so incredibly grounded with that tree, and that my branches also reach up into the heavens. And then I do healing work with the tree, recognizing that Reiki energy, that healing attention, goes out into the root network of the trees, and it spreads around the world instantaneously. Oh, and I do the same thing. We used to go to Florida for the winter, and we don't anymore, and I'm good with that. But one of the first things I would do would be walk ankle deep into the Atlantic, and I'd fire up Reiki, and I'd outstretch my arms, and I'd envision, set the intention that wonderful Reiki healing energy was going to spread like an oil slick and go everywhere that water touches. And then in my mind's eye, I'd watch it go all the way to the UK, and it would go all the way, and instantaneously it would circumvent the globe with wonderful healing energy. And again, it's like, don't know, can't quantify that it has the impact that I hope it does. But you know what? I don't need to quantify it. I put out the intention, I put out the love, I send the energy. In my heart of hearts, I know that it works exactly that way. And I think our world probably could use a couple more of us doing healing.
I think so. There are more and more people learning healing all the time.
Yeah.
And which is just wonderful. That's such a beautiful gift that you're giving when you do that.
Well, and it's just, I guess I've gotten to that place where I realize it's just me being who I came here to be.
Wonderful. Love it.
And for me, an old white guy in Michigan, to get to I was in business forever. I owned restaurants. I did real estate for 30 years. And I had an awful lot of rules. And I kept an awful lot of me in a box, a different box. The day came where I said, oh man, this is way too much work to keep Eric the business person and Eric the healer and Eric the psychic and, all the different hats I wear, to keep all that separate. Because I said, okay, let's just integrate. Let's just be me, who I came here to be. Man, life got so much easier.
Amen to that. Yeah. I think that's a powerful message for anyone listening. And I also think that also pairs with the thing you said about in your 40s, that feeling of homecoming when you're connected with the divinity within. And I think that's such a great thing to hear, because I think often when people consider opening up to something new or something very expansive or spiritually possibly challenging, but at the same time very expansive and nourishing, often there can be the fear that it's going to be a shock to the system. But actually, so often it is that homecoming feeling, as you described, which is actually a very beautiful, accessible experience that can be integrated. It's not that hard to integrate it when we're open to it. So,
and the other fear that I had, and I see quite frequently with people that are kind of coming out of that spiritual closet, is, oh, what's going to be expected of me if I do this? And, oh my gosh, what are my mom and dad and my Uncle Bruce and, this and that and the other thing? How are they going to respond? And I got to the place where I realized and was totally okay with the idea that anybody that walks away from me on that basis, see you bye. It isn't anybody that I actually would want in my life anyhow. And I don't think I really lost anybody, but I sure gained a lot of amazing, wonderful friends and co-workers and all the above.
absolutely. Well, you and I met for one thing, which would not
There you go.
have we both met.
And I think that our friendship is going to go well beyond just an occasional podcast appearance. So
Great. Well, I look forward to that. Did you find that in the Akashic Record? I'm going to ask you about the Akashic Record now.
okay.
Because obviously I've heard of it. I don't know anyone, as far as I know, who works with it directly. And I've heard the occasional person talking about it, but I haven't really studied it, paid attention to what it is. So would you like to put me out of my misery and tell me what about the Akashic Record? Where does it come from? What's it about? You said you trained in it and you've been practicing and working with it.
Yes. And it's one of my favorite places to hang out, it turns out. And understand that my understanding of it is just that. I am not the be all and end all of everything having to do with the Akashic Record. I was taught my method of accessing it and doing with it what I do. And originally I learned it more to work for myself, my process. But then the day came where it was like, okay, time to take this show on the road. And I started doing psychic fairs and health expos, and I'd have conversation about hypnosis, but then I'd do readings for people and from the Akashic Record. So it is, in my understanding, it is the complete and total history of our souls. Every lifetime, past, present, and future. But it by no means overrides that we have free will. On the future stuff. And the way they've described it to me, it's like, yep, you're driving down the road. And if you keep your hands at 10 and 2, what's right ahead of you is where you're going to go. And so what you get in the record about the future is predicated upon, if you keep in the direction you're going without making any changes, this is what you're likely to find on your way. Now, the three biggest questions that people come with more often than not are career, life purpose, and romantic relationships. I mean, all very human concerns, right? The record keepers have never given me, despite being asked many times, the total number of lifetimes that any particular person has lived. And I asked him about it one time. I said, help me understand, what I respect that you're not going to share that, but help me understand the why so that I can explain it to the client. And they're like, yeah, you humans, if we told you that you had 122 lifetimes or whatever the number would be, a lot of people would be inclined to get a little badge made that it says, I've had 122 lifetimes. And then they laughed and they said, but there's no asterisk there that says you only made it out of second grade 6 times. And so they don't give me that. I've never had anybody that was Cleopatra in another lifetime or, any of those sorts of things. I did have one young guy a couple of years ago, and when he sat down, I was just like, oh my God, this guy was a monk. And opened the record, after I got his permission. And sure enough, one of his teachers and friends then was St. Francis of Assisi. And the information that I got for him was that he actually had been the primary author of the prayer that we know as the St. Francis of Assisi prayer for peace. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. That's a beautiful prayer. I have it printed out and I read it often. And so the monk and I and the record keepers were talking about that, and they kind of laughed and they said, well, then as now, y'all knew that St. Francis had the brand name and that the prayer would get a lot more traction if it went out as the St. Francis prayer, as opposed to whatever this, tender young monk's name was.
Bill Jones.
And the funny thing was, this guy, he did not seem at all shocked by the fact that he was a contemporary of St. Francis of Assisi, nor was he seemingly shocked that he may well have been the author of that famous prayer. He was just the kindest, gentlest man. And so it appeared that the monkness that he had in another lifetime carried over with him into this lifetime.
Nice.
So
where is the Akashic Record actually stored? Do you have a kind of an understanding of that?
up in the cloud, just like with your computer. and we visited it. I mean, I do past life regression hypnosis with people. And sometimes we go visiting past lives, but wherever spirit kind of directs me to take them in that journey is where I go. And I have had some cases where part of that journey was to go to the library and go to the alcove where their records are contained. And of course, the volumes are enormous. And the record keeper will pull a volume down, put it on the table, and open it up. And the experience of the clients most often is that words or phrases are either getting highlighted or they're actually jumping off the page to draw the person's attention to them for whatever the information is that they need to know. When we go visiting past lives, one of the last questions that I asked, these are hard to describe because it's like, what do I call these people? So we're visiting another lifetime of the soul of the client that's here in my office with me. And so I asked that person, if you had one piece of advice that you'd like to pass on to the version of you who's living now, what would that be? And I want to tell you, we have gotten some incredibly profound insight from those statements from the past life people. So I feel like I danced all the way around your question. Have I answered it?
I think you have answered it. I also think it's not an easy question to answer because you're obviously in a different state when you're working with it from the state that you're in when you're on a podcast answering questions. So you're kind of painting a picture of it for me to then imagine it and for the listeners to then kind of imagine that. And I feel like you've done that beautifully, vividly. You know, I'm getting a sense of light and traveling, and you know, I'm getting like if you like, essential kind of essences of what you're talking about, if you like. So it's not, it strikes me, it's probably not an easy thing really to describe. And obviously you've done a lot of work. You did the training for several years. You've been practicing and working with it for a long time. And when you're working with a client, you're not describing it to the client, you're doing it with the client.
Right.
Clients with you in their experience.
And my realization a while back is that it really is a channeled message from the record keepers. They say things way differently than I would. And on occasion, I'll get the elbow from them and they'll say, tell them the experience in your life about this or this or this. And I always try to be really careful to say, okay, just so you know, this is Eric talking, not the record keepers, but they want me to tell you this story or share this meditation or this book or whatever it might be. And then I'll say, okay, now back to our originally scheduled program, talking with the record keepers. But I'd ask specifically that I never receive information of illness or death or disease. I don't want to be that guy, but I do energy because I'm a Reiki master. And so I will occasionally pick up on things. The funny ones are, I'll be reading. The access to the Akashic Record is by reading a prayer 3 times. 1 time it's out loud, 2 times it's silently. But as I'm reading the prayer, then I'm getting the starting point is downloading, or I'm seeing a video or hearing a song or whatever. But I'll often find myself like rubbing my shoulder, and I don't have any shoulder issues. Okay. I feel really fortunate. As badly as I take care of this body, that at 71, it still works as well as it does. But I'm like, okay, so what's going on with your right shoulder? Oh man, that's an old tennis injury. And so invariably there'll be something that connects the dot there. They give me the information sometimes with metaphors that are so foreign to who I am. Get a lot of sports metaphors, and I am just not a sports guy. But I've come to understand that they can give me the metaphors in a way that the client is going to relate and understand. So it's really, and I keep my record open when I'm doing, keep my Eric Webster hypnotherapist record open when I'm doing hypnosis. And invariably, there'll be a moment where I'll look up at the ceiling and in my head, I'll go, oh, thank you. That was really good. Because conceptually, it's probably where I was going to go, but the actual laser focus of the words and the phrasing of the words is so different than what I probably would have come up with on my own. And so it makes it even more impactful. I visualize that my crew is talking to their crew and saying, oh, have them say it this way. And they feed it to me, and that's where we go.
It actually sounds a lot of fun. Is it fun?
Oh, I've done a lot of things in my life, but I don't know that I've ever done work that feeds me on that soul level about making a difference in people's lives. I watched the light bulbs go on. And I had a woman a few months ago, and she's about due to come in for some more, I think. Texted me after a session, and she said, I just have to tell you, I walked out of your office with a perma smile. I've just not felt this happy and light in a very long time. And so to be blessed enough to be able to play that role in helping other people, it is just so, yeah, it's very satisfying.
Amazing. Eric, I'm going to take a slight shift in direction now.
Okay.
So we were talking earlier, there's a lot going on in the world, and nobody could argue there's not much going on in the world at the moment. And everyone's got their own opinion about what's happening, what should be happening, who should be doing whatever they should be doing, etc. And against that whole backdrop, there's a lot of people who are trying to be good leaders. And some of these are people who are just trying to stand and be good leaders in their own lives. And some have got leadership positions, and some are healers, and some are writers, and some are, and I like to think that most of these people are trying to be part of the solution. And some of those people are listening to this episode right now and listening to us. So is there something you would like to say to those people in relation to some of what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, keep up the good work. Don't, for me, there are days where it's really hard to not get discouraged. And I work at not getting down and swimming in the ditch. I mean, I'm in the US. It seems to be shit show central, but yet I know that if it's not, wait, how does that go? It'll all be fine in the end, and if it's not fine, it's not the end. That has been a credo of my life for a very long time, and I don't have to understand the why and the wherefore about everything that's going on. I wish that the people that are asking the question, well, how could this get worse, would quit asking that question, because I think the universe says, well, here, let me show you. But I come back time and again to the prophet John Lennon. Imagine all you need is love. I mean, when you look at those sorts of thoughts that have been around 60s, that's a long time ago. But it really is so incredibly true. And so much of what's going on, and not only here in the US, but it seems like around the world, so much is seemingly with the motivation of separating us, dividing us, having us at war with each other. No, don't go there. There really is only us. And we have incredible power. So the more of us that can form that sort of intention and seeing the world as we hope it will be, as we know that it can be, we can create that. Absolutely. I don't have any doubt about that at all. So keep up the good work. Keep the faith. Remember that you are a bright light, and your light has never been needed more than it's needed now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Eric, it's been such fun talking to you today, and I would love to keep on talking to you. And I know that some of the listeners are going to want to know more, and possibly come and work with you, and perhaps come to your Akashic Record masterclasses that I saw that are sneaking out into the world now craftily. It's very, very, very exciting. Let us know where people can go to find you.
My website is ericwebster.com, and Eric is spelled properly as ERIC, Webster like the dictionary.com. Everything is there. There's a whole section of free tools that are predominantly about forgiveness, because I have personally worked with everything in there. And in some cases, they were transformationally powerful in my own life. So go take a ride in the free tools. But if there's anything at all that you find interesting or compelling there, or you want more information about, reach out. I am pretty compulsive about responding to emails and texts and phone calls. Everything I do, I can do in person in my office here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But I also do everything I do on Zoom. I don't speak any other languages other than English. So the two requirements are English speaking and good solid internet. And I'm happy to work with people wherever they are, happy to greet them wherever they are, and do whatever I can do to help them on their journey.
Amazing. Beautiful. Well, I can only imagine working with you, Eric, must be such fun and so rewarding. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, just like you just thanked all the leaders, because you're making such a contribution. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And I was just going to ask you, actually, we've talked about quite a lot today, and I had a feeling we would go into all kinds of fascinating directions. Has there been a favorite part of our conversation for you today?
Well, on a selfish level, just how much fun and how easily it flowed back and forth, and it just sort of naturally went where it was going. I believe that you and I both came in with some kind of intention of how do we want this to go, but I really think that larger hands than ours were directing the traffic there. And for me, that I had an opportunity to reach a whole different audience in a whole nother part of the world and all over the world, very likely, than I would have reached before. And it isn't about me. It really is never about me. But gosh, if something that I said lights a little fire, or if it helps somebody, if it encourages somebody that, oh, okay, yeah, I'm doing this and it's good and I like it, and if that sort of feed the motivation, you're not crazy. If that message came through and helped one person, if it helped shift one other person into that place of recognizing the divinity in every living being and making their first thought in the morning, thank you. I'm thankful every day that I woke up, because I know there are a lot of people that woke up dead on any given morning. And at the end of the day, regardless of what's going on, thank you. Thank you that I had a day that I was able to walk my walk, talk my talk, and hopefully be of kindness and value to someone in my world.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And I'm not making that up. I mean, I'm human, so perfection isn't even on the menu. But I really do strive to be that guy, even on the days where I probably fall incredibly short. So
I know what you mean. And I'm going to ask you for one final thing after all of the gifts you've already given us today, which is, would you like to leave the listeners with some sort of reflection question that they can contemplate over the coming week that will help them connect to some of what we've been talking about today?
I think that the theme of it would be about worthiness, about their own perception of who they are, and to step back from the little negative voice that sits on their shoulder and chatters in their ear about, oh, you suck at life, and if you're maybe perfect, maybe someday there'll be somebody that'll love you a little bit, but if you're not feeling loved, it's because you suck. And I just know so many people that are walking around with that extra 100 pounds of weight that they're traveling with. But I remember a meditation that I did, and again, it's been 20 years ago probably. And I was having a conversation with the Creator, and she is not the hellfire and brimstone God that so many people have been taught. She's a lovely, loving, forgiving, accepting, beautiful person, being, whatever, I guess. And the question that she asked me, she said, Eric, when I look at you, I'm pretty tickled with the quality of the workmanship that went into you. And I wonder, who the hell do you think you are to see yourself so much less than, to look at yourself so harshly. Do you really think you know more than I do? And so if everybody would take a look in the mirror and ask themselves the question of, if there's truly divinity within me, and there is, just to be clear, where do I get off being so critical of some of God's best creation?
Classic. Brilliant. I love it. Thank you so, so much, Eric Webster.
Oh, thank you. This has been great fun.
It's been fantastic. So everybody, thank you, everybody, for listening. That's all for Truth and Transcendence today. You can find our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, and share with your friends, and comment on what we were discussing today. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. And Eric Webster, it's been such a delight. Thank you so much.
Oh, for me as well. I'll look forward to doing it again at some point.
100%. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.